In 2023, we had a chance to visit the beautiful Scotland, Ireland, and Northern Ireland on our first expedition cruise. Come along with us as we eat and drink our way. This is Kinny and JJ go all the way to the British Isles. This was our first time cruising with Hurtigruten, and we took the 11-day Scottish Whiskey Trail and Irish Sea adventure. Our adventure started in Glasgow and then went to Portrush, Northern Ireland, Belfast, Isle of Man, Dublin, Ireland, and then went back up the coast to head up Isle of Arran, Tobermory, Fort Williams, Obin, and Islay, and then back to Glasgow. We flew into Glasgow on March 22nd, and as soon as we got there, we hit up our first pub to go ahead and get a pint and to get some sticky toffee pudding, which is my absolute favorite. Although our cruise itinerary said that we were leaving from Glasgow, we were actually leaving from Greenock, which was about an hour away by train. We made sure to stop at another pub on the way before we got onto our Hurtigruten expedition cruise on the MS Spitsbergen. A few fun facts about this ship: it was refurbished in 2016 and it has a 220 person capacity. Here's our little bitty room. This is the bedroom. This is where we do our cabin shuffle dance. This is our mirror and where our clothes go. And then our little bitty bathroom. That is also a shower. And here is what the limited view looked like. This didn't bother me so much, but what did bother me is that there is a walkway right outside of our room, so people could walk by and see straight in, so we had to keep the blinds shut most of the time. So just remember, if you book a room on the 7th floor, people can see in. Because this is a smaller ship, there's very limited lounge spaces or places to hang out. There's this upper lounge, and also connected to that is the lower lounge. This is where we had most of our briefings. That's also where the bar is located, but just know the bar is not included, you have to pay for that. There's also a science center on the ship where we were told there would be all kinds of different scientific activities going on and looking at different things, but really there wasn't much going on. There was a photography class held in here and a couple of other little things. And there's the observation deck that's on top of the ship. Now let's talk about the price and what's included. We bought this cruise in March of 2022 for about $5,000 per person. If you purchase this cruise today, it would be about $8,000 per person for the same room. And what's included for that price? Well, this Helly Hansen outer shell parka is included. Just know that it's the outer shell, it's not the inner jacket as well, but it came in very handy for all the wind and rain. As I mentioned before, drinks at the bar are not included. You could buy an expensive drink package, or you could just wait and have your free wine with dinner. We also learned to ask for a glass of wine with dessert. That way we could carry our wine around the ship with us after dinner. A few excursions were also included, so let's talk about excursions in the booking process. This sheet was in the lobby, and it is the only sheet that was provided to show all of the excursions. You had to go up to this one sheet along with everyone else and try to figure out which excursions you wanted to do. It was also kind of like a matrix that you would have to see if one excursion overlapped with another. This also shows you if the excursion is included or you have to pay a price for it. You could only book included excursions before the cruise. All of the other optional excursions had to be booked on the ship, and it was pure chaos. Imagine a mad rush of 100 people trying to go to one board to see this one sheet. You would then go onto the Hurtigruten app and put in the excursion code to book your excursion. And you didn't get access to the app until you're actually on board the ship. The app was not only used to book excursions, but it was also used as your daily itinerary. However, it was only populated around 9 p.m. the night before your arrival to the next port. According to the staff, this was all done in an effort to reduce paper. I'm a very detailed planner, so all of these things drove me nuts to the point where I almost regretted taking this cruise. Luckily, the beauty of all of our ports saved the cruise, so let's talk about those ports now. For most ports, we would arrive around 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and we would leave around 5 p.m. Our first stop was Northern Ireland at Port Rush, where the Giant's Causeway is located. The Giant's Causeway is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Giant's Causeway has been named the 4th most greatest natural wonder in the United Kingdom. These rocks were formed by a volcanic eruption long time ago. However, if you ask a local how these rocks came about, they'll have a completely different story to tell you, involving a giant. The tour starts at a visitor center where you get a headset to learn about the Giant's Causeway as you walk the site. But there's all these hiking trails all around, so you can really walk as far as you want and look at all of the beautiful scenery. Our next stop was Dunluce Castle, with ruins from the 16th century, and this castle sits on the edge of a cliff, so it has beautiful views. The next day, we stopped at Belfast in Northern Ireland, and our first stop was the Titanic Museum, which was one of the best museums that we've ever visited, so I highly recommend it if you're in Belfast. And right across from the Titanic Museum is the Titanic Studios. This is where interior scenes of Game of Thrones was filmed. All around the city, there's these huge stained glass windows called the Glass of Thrones. That's a walking trail that depicts some of the most iconic scenes from Game of Thrones. We took photos with the stained glass on our walk to the Crown Liquor Saloon. This is a pub that dates back to the 1880s and used to be one of the Victorian gin palaces in the city. Here we were able to try several of their cask beers. And if you've never tried cask beer, you should definitely try it. It's got a little bit less carbonation and is always fresh because the beer must be consumed within 48 hours of it being tapped. Overnight, we moved over to Isle of Man, which is a self-governing British Crown dependency located in the Irish Sea. Most people know Isle of Man for the birthplace of the Bee Gees and for this little bitty refuge castle that's located in the middle of a bay in Isle of Man. Just kidding. Almost everyone knows Isle of Man from the Isle of Man TT, a very dangerous motorcycle race that happens once a year. And John would have loved to see the TT race, but we were not there the right time of the year. So instead of going really fast, we went really slow on this old train from the 1800s, which took us to an original Manx village with thatched roofs. Now, a fun fact, Manx are what the people of Isle of Man are called, but also, if you've ever heard of a Manx cat, they also came from the Isle of Man. After our tour of the Manx village, we went back to the port and found a pub that was serving Manx beer. And I found this thing when I was walking down the street. I don't know what it is, but it looked really cool. So if you know what it is, comment below and let me know. Overnight, our ship went back across the Irish Sea to Dublin. John and I were very excited for this stop because we had booked a private tour with one of the brewers at Guinness months in advance, only to find out the night before we were going into the port that we would be arriving at 7 a.m. and leaving at 1 p.m. A lot of people on the cruise were furious, and I believe they let the crew know that. Luckily, we were able to get to Guinness before it opened, and we talked to the receptionist. And while we couldn't get our refund for the tour that we booked, they were able to exchange it for every single different type of offering that they had. So we did everything that we could at Guinness in the short amount of time that we had. And that also means that we drank about 5 or 6 pints of Guinness in an hour's time. We had to speed through the Guinness Museum, so we didn't get to spend a lot of time at all the exhibits, but it did look fantastic. And when you're finished, go all the way up to the top, and there's this bar that overlooks the entire city that was just beautiful. Over the night, our ship crossed the Irish Sea again to get to Isle of Arran in Scotland. Now, when we booked this cruise, we saw this was one of the stops, but we had no idea what was here, and so our expectations were kind of low. And this actually turned out to be one of our favorite stops on the cruise, despite the weather being terrible. As we were cruising into the Isle of Arran, we were welcomed by a pod of dolphins. And you can't really tell here, but at this time there was a snowy, sleety mixture going on. We decided to do the included excursion, which was a visit to Brodick Castle. And we were supposed to be getting a castle tour and a grounds tour. Well, when we got there, the castle was closed. Another win for Hurtigruten. So it was actually much rainier than what this picture shows, but the grounds were still really beautiful and we had a great time exploring. One of the optional excursions I wanted to do was hike Glen Rosa, but it was going to be like €100 per person. So instead we decided to find the path and hike it ourselves. And to get there, we asked for directions and someone told us to go past the fairy houses and we would find the path. And they were not kidding. There were all of these trees that had little bitty fairy houses. We trekked through a muddy forest, and then all of a sudden the forest opened up and there was this huge, beautiful glen. And while we were hiking around the glen, we actually passed by a few people from our ship who actually paid to do the hike. So we were really glad that we didn't do that and we decided to do it on our own. Lucky for us, the end of the Glen Rosa loop trail ended right beside Isle of Arran Brewery, so we were able to hop in and get some samples of beer. Per usual, our ship moved through the night, and the next day we ended up in Tobermory. So this is the 6th day into our expedition cruise, and it's the first time that we actually do an expedition style experience where you get on a Zodiac and you go see what wildlife you can find. And we happened to see this little seal that actually chased our boat. After our Zodiac ride, we had about an hour to explore the little town and try out some of the local whiskey. And then we went on to do our paid excursion, which was called the Panoramic Mull Tour, which ended up just being a bus tour that stopped at a few different spots on the island and we could see all of its natural beauty. And at the end of the tour, we stopped at a pub to get a pint of beer before getting back on the ship. The next morning, we arrived in Fort Williams, which is the quintessential Scottish Highlands. This morning, we opted to do the included excursion, which was a gondola ride up in the Nevis range. At the top of the gondola, there's a few different hiking paths that can give you some fantastic overlooks. And if it's really clear, you can even see the UK's tallest mountain, Ben Nevis. But for us, it was a little bit covered up. There was also a really cute cafe up at the top that had beer, and it was called the highest bar in the UK. That afternoon, we were magically transported to one of the stops we were most looking forward to. This is Loch Shiel, and you might recognize it from a few scenes from Harry Potter. Little did we know that directly across the street from Loch Shiel is the Glenfinnan Viaduct, where the Hogwarts Express, or the Jacobite train, still runs during certain seasons. Unfortunately, our tour only stopped here for about 15 minutes, so we really had to rush to get any pictures. I really do wish I had a port key to go back there. Continuing on our tour, we stopped at Neptune's staircase. This staircase lock was built in the early 1800s and is comprised of 8 locks. These days, only small boats can fit through, and luckily we actually got to see one go through the locking system. And our final stop on the tour was the Nevis Distillery, where we got to try out some more local whiskey. As our ship left Fort Williams, heading to our next destination, we passed by this really cute lighthouse on a very narrow passageway. Our next stop was the beautiful Obin, where we started off with a walking tour that was included with the cruise. You can't help but to notice this Colosseum-like structure towering over the city. It was originally supposed to be an art museum, but when the person who commissioned it passed away, construction stopped, and now it's just this structure. After our tour, we stopped in this little pub to get a bite to eat and grab a beer before our next tour would start. A bus ride through the beautiful Glencoe. A lot of people know Glencoe as the Scottish Highlands, and you might recognize some of the scenery from some movies, for example, the 1980s movie Highlander. While our bus did make frequent stops, I do wish we could have spent much more time in this area. One museum that we stopped at taught me a very important lesson. Overnight, we moved to our very last stop, Islay. Islay is known for their whiskey that has a very distinctive peaty taste. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, we set out to find some of this whiskey, and we passed by a really old standing stone. I touched it. I didn't transport to anywhere though. In the original posting for this cruise, it said that we would be doing a walking excursion to Lagavulin. When I asked the expedition leader about it, she had no idea what Lagavulin was. So John and I ended up booking our own Lagavulin tour and tasting experience. This included an opportunity to bottle some Lagavulin of our own to take home with a special blend that's only available if you come to the site. The excursion that was actually included with the cruise was to Ardbeg. So we decided we should try that out too. Hey, what's more whiskey? There was supposed to have been a little food truck and a restaurant that was open, but when we got there, everything was closed. The owner was there to let us in and gave us all a tasting, but by this time I could have really used some food. That night we were also supposed to be doing a whiskey tasting on the ship. I couldn't do it, so John had to go alone. After the cruise ended up being some of the best parts of our trip, so I wanted to share that too. But stay tuned to the end because I want to also give my thoughts on the overall cruise. After the cruise, we rented a car and drove to a little Airbnb south of Glasgow. When I saw all of the sheep around, I knew our Airbnb was going to be good, but I had no idea that it was going to be this good. We spent the afternoon enjoying the scenery and kayaking around a little pond with the kayaks that were provided. Then, the next morning, I took an outdoor bath before we had to catch our flight to London. We had a little bit of issues in London with our flight, so we ended up having to stay in London overnight. So of course we had to find something to do. And I found the Royal Standard of England, this very cute restaurant that's located about 30 minutes away from London Heathrow. It looked like something straight out of Harry Potter, and we got to try some dishes we've never had, like spotted dick, which was actually a dessert, and of course have some more beer. It ended up being a fantastic ending to our trip. Alright, I want to end this video with a few of my opinions and thoughts and suggestions for this trip. The British Isles are beautiful and you should definitely visit them, but I would wait until at least April to do your visit, because when we were there, some of the things that we wanted to do were actually closed because it was the off season. Next, the only way to get to some of the isles is by boat, So either that's a cruise ship or a ferry. And some of the locals told us that the ferry system is unreliable. And so a lot of the people who were on our ship were actually from Scotland and had never visited some of the isles. I would say spending 1 to 2 days on each isle is enough time to see everything that you need to see. Overall, I thought the act of cruising was a great way to see the isles because it's like a moving hotel, so you don't have to worry about packing your bags every night and going to a new location. You have your hotel room with you at all times. It's very unfortunate to say, but I would not recommend the Hurtigruten British Isles Expedition cruise. This cruise was very unorganized. It did not leave me feeling calm and peaceful like I should be on a vacation. A lot of the included excursions were just walks around the town, and then the ones that were not just a walk around the town ended up being closed. The overall environment on the ship was just not fun. It was super quiet. There was not even any ambient music playing over the speakers. I think I was also expecting a bit of a younger crowd because this is an expedition cruise, which was not the case. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helps you when deciding if you should do a British Isles cruise.